Thank you very much, Alica, for this introduction. I think I won't be repeating what you said already. As you mentioned, yes, oops, sorry. Yes, there you go. Our purpose, or our contribution, in our contribution, we'll be talking with Vicky about what is the role of children in radio broadcasting, or more precisely, how children as an audience can and should influence the nature of media content. Just at a general level, both from the side of academia and media content creators, there are various interpretations of how children as an audience should be perceived. There are interpretations that view them more as vulnerable, impressionable, or in need of protection from media influence, to those that perceive children as adults in making and ready and capable of grasping more serious content. This contribution in particular, as being part of a larger research, we aim here to acknowledge children as active listeners with opinions and interests of their own, and with a desire to incorporate these very interests in the media that they're listening to. At the same time, we recognize, or we understand, we have to understand, as it will be shown in what follows, this complex interrelationship that radio broadcasting has towards its young audience in terms of not only content and the format that it chooses, but also in terms of execution. And as Alica mentioned in the beginning, this is part of a larger research known as Multicultural Life and Education in Child Prosumers. It's a research it's a research project funded by the Technology Agency of the Czech Republic. It's an applied research, and our main projects in this are, apart from the Czech television and the Czech radio. I will now, so just to finish, as I was saying, this contribution will be regarding only one of the other research questions that we have. So the research itself focuses on other also areas of how children interact with the media. Okay, so I will let Vicky now to tell us a little bit more about the methodology that we used, and then we will go to findings.
Okay, thank you. So now let's move to methodology and participants.
Yes, right away. There you go.
Yeah, thank you. So to explore children's media experience and their suggestions for improvements, 13 focus groups were carried out in spring of 2019. We had given careful consideration to ethical issues and group composition factors such as group size and participants' age, as well as location selection, moderators' preparation, and activities designing. So the focus groups in average took 45 minutes long, were carried out in 4 public elementary schools across the Czech Republic. There were 74 children, of those 39 girls and 34 boys. Now just some details about the design of focus groups. It included several creative activities. As a first one, we showed them 5 paper cards portraying TV, computer, touchpad, smartphone, and radio. And as the radio was the most commonly marked as the least important in their lives, the next activity was to create a promoting poster for the radio they would actually listen to. So the creating of posters were similar to collage making because they could write, draw, and cut out pictures of magazines. And in total 51 posters were made and by the individual and grouped children. So after that, we also encouraged them to explain, describe, and discuss with us as researchers and other participants their posters, what they mean for them, what they want to promote and include in their radio station. And the third activity, we used two samples. One of them was children's radio news, and the second one was a YouTube video by children, graded by children radio station. The first one was radio news, was more traditional, in traditional format, and the second one was included a Czech well-known influencer. So it was a kind of like a newer format for the children. So we showed them the samples, and then we asked them how did they like it, what they think about it, if they found it interesting or even relevant for them. Yes, and well, there are going to be answers for that, so I'll give a word to Olga.
All right, so in terms of findings, one of the things that we found in terms of what the authors of these samples and in general the authors of media content and the children as participants share in common is the idea of relevance. So both children the participants expect relevant content, as well as the authors of these samples that we used aim at being relevant. So even not only in terms of content, but also in terms of the format they use. So when we showed them in terms of the YouTube excerpt that we used, through which one station promoted its content towards children, children agreed that for their own stations, they would like to use it as well. For example, an 11-year-old boy was saying that, well, I think that in these times, a lot of people watch those YouTubers, so I think it is a good promotion. Same with the news excerpt that we used. The format itself, the idea of having a program presenting news was for many of them quite exciting. However, what we found that influences this relevance, or the extent to which the participants found the samples relevant or not, or the content in general, was not as much the content itself and the format, as it was the actual execution. So just to give an example, in the YouTube, as Vicky said before, the YouTube fragment that we used, there was the YouTuber was about maybe a 25, 30-year-old man who, alongside other children, was sort of talking about books or animals and so far. However, he was acting very silly. He was making weird noises. He was constantly asking weird questions. All in all, he couldn't really find any sympathy in the participants, in the sense that they immediately dismissed him as acting very cringy and in an awkward way. And some of the participants, like for example, an 11-year-old girl said that, I don't know YouTubers well, I don't watch them much, but if a YouTuber should promote me, meaning the radio station that she was thinking of, he shouldn't be so awkward and make it so embarrassing. It would have to have some standard. So the critique regarding this YouTuber was quite harsh. And same with the news. We found that whilst they don't mind the format or the idea of having news, it was again the execution that bothered them more. They found that the news presenter was talking too fast. It was just too much happening in too short of a time. So again, it was that execution that decided the extent to which they found the samples relevant. It's also important to point out in terms of when children created these posters representing their own radio stations, we found that it was quite, interesting how very few posters actually had any childlike content. Yes, here we have 3 examples of posters that were created, and 2 of them were essentially about animal rights, and they had very activistic elements in them. They say like stop hurting animals, and I can't say well, but anyways, like they were promoting the essentially animal rights. And then the last poster is the Bon Appetit radio is would be a station where they would be talking about cooking. And there were others about sports, especially, and so on and so forth. So the main idea is that there is no such thing, like such a well-defined thing as childlike content. The participants themselves expected a wide range of ideas, or like presented a wide range of ideas for their own radio stations. I will let Vicky present us some of the more findings.
Yes, thank you. So yeah, we further found out that radio was a part of children's complex media experiences. The radio offered them a different experience in comparison with other media. It was like more predominantly the more cross-generational and adult-led media experience. For example, this 10-year-old boy told us that he listens to radio only with his grandma when he stays at her place. Further, there is an importance of shared characteristics with other media they use, such as multimodal or personalized content. They expected their radio programs to be connected to their favorite TV shows, books, popular culture, etc. And for the next slide, please, Olga. Thank you. Here we can see the two posters made by, the first one is called My Dream Radio ET. And it was made by an 11-year-old girl. She was a really big fan of fan fiction and detective stories. She shared this interest with her father, and she built the whole radio content on the work of Agatha Christie. And yes, the second one, it's called Little Rabbit Radio, was made by two 13-year-old girls, and they were huge fans of otaku and J-pop, K-pop. So their radio was intended for them, for otaku audience, and for all ages. So the radio broadcasts internationally and includes these songs, K-pop, J-pop, and audio manga, etc. So another finding, please. Yes, another slide. Here we can see another finding that was the borders between radio as a platform and radio broadcasting was often blurry. Some children created posters, promoting posters for radio platform. As we can see at first poster, the 9-year-old girl was promoting the platform, the discount of the platform, which is much more cheaper than the expensive anonymous counterpart. And the second one, we can see this one was made by two boys, and they made the radio platform called Radio Internet. And they advertised it and described it as a mobile radio that can be charged and has a touch screen in the middle. So now for the conclusions, Olga. Okay.
Yes. So a couple of main things became quite obvious. One of them is that children's everyday culture children's everyday life and their culture is abundant in cultural references that change quite fast as well. So it is crucial in order to create a relevant content or a content that it aims at being as relevant as possible. It is absolutely crucial to have it thorough understanding of what these everyday experiences are and what are these cultural references that children either talk between each other or are simply representing their own interests. Another important point is that execution does matter. So no matter how hard you're trying on creating that well-befitting content or trying various platforms to promote it, be it YouTube or Spotify or the actual radio device, it is really the execution that in the end makes a difference. And not only any execution, but it is an execution that is actually appropriate and deemed relevant and appropriate by children and not by the authors of the content. Yes, and maybe I'll let Vicky for a final word. I think we can't hear you.
Sorry, thank you. Yes, for the conclusion, in order to reach like such understanding and successfully apply it to today's media and journalism practice, we finally argue that children's uses of and attitudes toward each individual media, such radio, that must be considered in the context of their complex and multifaceted experience with diverse media. And we consider that the main change that need to be taken into account is to recognize the role of children as creators also, while creating the content for them by media. So thank you for your attention.
Thank you. I think this is all from us.